Hi, I'm Rick Belden, and this is Masculinity from the Inside Out, an exploration of the inner lives of men. If you find this content valuable, please like, share, and ring the bell for notifications. Thank you.
So everybody talks about the inner child. We've talked about the inner preteen, the inner teenager, the inner young adult. Um, Talk about how the voice or the way that you get to know yourself might change starting if, because maybe you can start doing inner child work, reflecting on yourself as a toddler, grade school. But then whenever you get into those preteen years, people don't really talk about that, reflecting back on when you were maybe somewhere in between, let's say 10 and 12. And I think that that's like such a key developmental time. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's kind of one of my favorite areas, or it has become over the years, because it took me a long time to sort of move into that area in terms of my own work. And one of the clues I had was that I've always been very comfortable with little kids and elementary school kids, and even kind of up into middle school. But as an adult, I have found myself feeling uncomfortable and intimidated by teenagers, particularly, as you said, kind of that, for me, it's kind of like that 12 years old to about 15.
Mhm.
Once a kid kind of gets to be about 16 or so, maybe late 15, 16, 17, I feel like I can kind of deal with them. I feel like I kind of understand what's going on there. Uh, but between 11 or 12 and 14 or 15, kids that age have, I've just felt it was hard for me to sort of understand what's happening with them, and I would feel uncomfortable and kind of intimidated, and I didn't know why. And then over the years, I started to realize it's like, oh, that was such a difficult age for me,
Yeah.
and I hadn't really ever sort of come back into relationship with who I was at
Mhm.
that age and the changes that I went through at that age. And I realized that I was intimidated by that. I was intimidated by actually making contact with what life was like for me at that age.
Never thought of it that way. And honestly, I feel I share that same age group. I mean, uh, or that same age range where it was tough for me. I would say fifth grade through seventh grade was really challenging for me. Um, and I mean, I found that if I look back, that was the age where I really started to manipulate my personality a lot to fit in and be
Yeah.
accepted by my peers. And also, it was now I can look back and think that that was where my ego and sense of self really began to form how I view the world. You know,
Mhm.
this is what
Mhm.
people think of me. This is what I am. This is what I'm not, which is really interesting for me. I mean, uh, being mixed, you know, and being,
Mhm.
uh, and that I was going through a lot of changes in my life in terms of like my mom was remarrying, my dad was about to get married, so I was meeting two new, I guess at the time they were like, I guess you could say parent figures, you know,
Mhm.
um, just a time whenever like everything in my world was changing, and also I was trying to learn how to like think about myself, and I
Mhm.
never really thought about what you just said. I'm so comfortable around high schoolers. I mean, I do it every day coaching. And then middle schoolers, you know, seventh and eighth grade is usually when I start when I've began to like mentor kids or train kids on the basketball court. But that kind of like fifth, sixth grade, that 11, 10, 11, 12. So it's just such a weird age. It's just such a weird age.
Well, and I think all the emphasis on inner child work is great, because I think it's really important. But I think, as with so many other things in doing this kind of personal work, it's it's important to sort of look at you're presented with a conceptual framework. It's like inner child work. But I think you also have to like customize it to your situation. So like, what is the time frame in your childhood, which extends into the teenage years, that was the most difficult, where you actually like pivoted in some ways away from who you were into who you decided that you were going to be?
And when people hear inner child, I mean, even me, when I hear inner child, I imagine me and then like talking to a 5, 6, or 7 year old self.
Right,
I don't think when people hear inner child, they think of like their 11, 12, or 13-year-old self,
right.
but they should.
If I think it's worth examining for everybody, because that's such a dynamic threshold crossing period, because your body is starting to change, your hormones are starting to run, you're starting to notice that you have sexual interest, that kind of stuff. For me, it was a time when, I mean, so many things happened at the same time. We talked about it. I think I talked about it in our mentoring discussion. I didn't have any older siblings. And so I just felt kind of lost in terms of social behavior, what's expected, and so forth. I was also almost a year behind because I had a late birthday. And so things were starting to change. There was a way that I'd been able to operate through elementary school and into middle school, where I was comfortable and I felt like people saw me in a way that was comfortable for me. Uh,
Mhm.
and then when we started moving into middle school and into like the early years of high school, um, I started getting a lot of attention that I didn't like.
Mhm.
Girls would come up to me and say, "Oh, I want to marry you because you're so smart and you're going to be rich someday." And I was like, "What? What does that even mean? I don't even know who you are." Um, and I used to be comfortable with in a small class, however many kids were in the class in my elementary school classes. It was a small group of people. And the level of attention that I got was comfortable for me. And then we moved into the middle school, and there were all the regional elementary schools combined together. And then we moved into the high school, and it was like all of that, plus it was 4 different grades with kids that were way older. And I just reached a point where it's just like, I don't want anybody to see me. I just want to hide. And I gave up parts of myself. I was one of those model rocket kids, and I loved it. But I realized it's like, this isn't cool. This is not cool. Now it might be. At that time, it wasn't. It was like, oh, you're a nerd, you're a brainiac. And I just got so much of that stuff and I just didn't want it. And so I started shedding parts of myself that
Mhm.
I associated with that. I stopped doing art at that time because I didn't want to be seen as, one of the art kids. And so, and kind of like you were talking about with your parents remarrying, uh, we had a big deal where my family sold the house suddenly and we had to move into a mobile home and I didn't have a bedroom anymore. And then my parents had 3 more children. And the next house we moved into was the same size as the original one with the same number of bedrooms. And all of a sudden, there's no room for me. So I moved down into the basement. So I literally went underground uh, because there wasn't space for me in the home. And I started to go underground at school too because I felt like the attention I was getting was just it was overwhelming for me, and whether it was good or bad. And so I really started to and I guess the thing that is kind of maybe tricky about this in some ways for me is that's the time at which I first self-defined my identity.
Mhm.
So prior to that, it was kind of like I felt like my identity was kind of given to me
Mhm.
by the family and by being in school and by my friends and all that kind of stuff. And so I began to self-define my identity. And that was like a big moment for me that I
Mhm.
realized it's like, oh, I can actually do that.
Right. And it's so interesting that age because by the time you're 10, 11, or 12, you found some things that you truly do enjoy, that you
Mhm.
truly are passionate about. Um, and then whenever you get in this social environment around your peers, that really important here to bring up that like, you know, in this inner child work, a lot of stuff we look at maybe initially we think that the parts of us we push away because of our parents or our siblings, but like just general being in school, being in a social setting, you learn very quickly, like our society, we have group think, group thought forms. And
Mhm.
so you decide which traits of yourself, things that you enjoy, are less valued, are looked down upon, are judged. And I think one thing about going and doing inner child work in this segment of one's childhood, I learned from experience, is not only are you able to heal parts of yourself that you suppressed during that time, you're able to reconnect with a lot of like ways of being, things, little hobbies,
Yep.
but even attitudes and perspectives towards life that are really more truly you than a lot of the stuff that you adopted. And I think that's maybe a key difference between, let's say, doing like inner child work between 5 and 9, or whatever. I think when you take it up a little bit, you kind of find more about like the things that you had already began like to love to do, or perspectives that you naturally held, or like truer expressions of your personality.
That's it. I'm so glad you said that. That was also good because number one, the peer pressure, peer conformity, whatever you want to call it, that's the age when that age I'm talking about, that's when it really kicked in. Like for me, like
Mm-hmm.
middle school, early high school, that's when I really started to feel it. And then what you said about when you come into contact with that part of yourself, you come into contact with the things that you gave up, that you liked, but you gave them up because this doesn't really fit the persona that I want to present to other people that I think will be acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And there's trauma at that age too. I mean, like preteen, teenage, early teenage, that could be a lot of trauma for an
Yeah,
individual.
absolutely. I mean, well, as you're growing into ego, you start to really look at the physical world, and you start to learn how to play this game. So that also comes with the fact that like an insult or a judgment or a criticism from a peer at that time, oh, it goes deep. It goes deeper at that age than maybe it would, than I know it would, in young adulthood or in adulthood. It goes deeper at that time because you're taking on your environment as like, this is all of these are truths and this is all real.
And there's that uncertainty, like, do I really know what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Like, so there's a lot of, I think, validation seeking
Mm-hmm.
that goes
And
on.
you don't yet possess the awareness that the kid bullying you or criticizing you, that's an expression of pain or fear themselves. You accept it. And I remember thinking like kids who had strong, judgmental, bully style personalities, I thought they were actually stronger. Like I thought that was strength. And um, I thought that kindness and or whatever, being who you really are, was like weakness. And so my mind began to say, this is the way that I need to be or should be, or to be strong, you need to be able to be mean to people or whatever. Like you start to really internalize that stuff for real.
Yep, yep. And in my case, and there's so much you're saying a lot of good stuff. There's so much I could say. A couple things that come to mind is, one is that I fit the profile of a highly sensitive person. That's how I am. And I began to realize that my sensitivity was not seen as a positive or not seen as an asset by the people around me.
Yeah,
That people
likewise.
sort of preyed on it and came at me. And because of that orientation, and because I was also like younger than others, didn't have any older siblings, and having that level of sensitivity, like you said, things really went in. They
Mhm.
really went in. And so I was a skinny kid, and I was a smart kid, and so I got challenged a lot. So like, what's our topic? Masculinity from the inside out. Well, my sense of who I was, uh, in terms of my masculinity, was really, really damaged by things that people said to me. Because, and I don't know how much this is the case now. Now there's supposedly we have geek culture and it's more acceptable. When I was at that age, it's like being a smart kid, being a skinny kid, like you weren't really, and being a boy is like, well, you're not really one of the boys.
Mhm.
And so I was fighting that the whole time.
I can so relate to that. I can so relate to that. And uh, I mean, because I'm highly creative, highly open, highly sensitive to negative emotion. Also, and in hindsight, I understand that I was like gaslighting myself. Like I would be like, I would these emotions would go on, but I would push them away because I had already formed an ideal of how I should be perceived, especially because I was tall, I was muscularly developed, and I was a
Right.
good athlete. There was a way that you should be that was given to me that I accepted.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I feel like people from that time, anyone who knew me, would never believe that I was like very, very sensitive and very emotional. I wasn't like an asshole by any means, but I was not emotionally expressive at all. And I would see these things, feel these things. I would observe. I actually can remember observing peers not being themselves and being emotionally stressed and having that like empathic resonance, like feeling it, but not acknowledge that I was feeling it. You know, I would almost push away that awareness. Not almost, I would do that. And part of this work too, part of this work, the inner child work at this age also can reconnect you to those like, no, you do feel that. And you do always notice whenever someone else is in distress and maybe they're not even aware of it. And you can reconnect to that and reconnect to that power, you know, that power, you know, we make ourselves weaker as we forsake our authenticity.
Yeah. And again, I think there's the contrast between you and I really is great for the purposes of these kind of discussions. Because again, you're on one end of the spectrum. You're seen as in a certain way because you're physically powerful and you're physically capable and all these things. And I'm seen in another way because I'm skinny and I'm kind of clumsy and all this stuff. And people might think, well, that guy Chris, he had it made. Like he didn't have any problems.
Dude, it's crazy, right? So like I by nature, like man, by nature, I'm like just the nerdiest, most inquisitive person. I love learning. I love the feeling whenever I have a thought that I've never had before, all of that. And that's always been there. I would love like learning about the most shy person in class. Didn't matter, like fascinated by people, fascinated by knowledge. As this early ego thing began to evolve, I really remember there would be moments when I started to adopt this persona that I had chosen that would be accepted. And I would make fun of somebody and I would feel so bad about it. I would feel so bad about doing that, but it would get laughs, it would get approval,
Right.
it would get, and I just like
Yeah.
splitting of the true self, like just happening. And you go to school every day, you know, like that's, you know, so it's just like becoming and becoming and becoming and like, um, it's a negative feedback loop because it's almost like the more you're willing to forsake who you really are, the more you'll gain approval in that
Right.
set.
Right. Right. And so in my case, I talked earlier, and isn't this is telling, right? I'm still embarrassed to say this, that I was a model rocket kid. I still feel embarrassed about it. I
What is
didn't feel,
model rocket? What is the first time you
oh
said it?
my God. Okay.
Somebody's gonna
So
know.
like, okay. So this is back in the early 70s, and the space program was big and kids were really into space. And so as a hobby, you could build little rockets that had engines in them.
Right.
And you could launch them, and they had parachutes, and the parachute would pop out and the thing would come down and it would land in a tree like a kite or something like that. And you're like, oh, I built this thing. So
Now I know. Now I
yeah.
know.
So yeah, so I loved it when I was doing it, but at some point because of the sort of negative attention I was getting about being a smart kid, being a nerdy kid, and all this stuff, I came to the conclusion, it's like, well, this is not an okay activity for me if I want to be seen as a regular one of the boys.
Yeah.
And so I not only did I stop, but I put everything in boxes. All this stuff I had carefully built, all these rockets I'd had that had flown over and over again, and I'd repaired them and all this stuff. Put them in a box under the stairs in the basement. And at one point, a friend's younger brother said he was interested in that, and I gave it all away. I gave it all away. I didn't keep any of it. And some of those were things that I had. I wasn't. You could buy kits, and that's what I started with. But I started designing my own stuff.
A physical, it was like in your physical world, what was going on internally was actually happening. It's so crazy.
Because not only did I release that interest, not only did I release that part of myself, I hated it.
Yeah,
I hated that part of
yeah,
myself.
dude, man. So like, have you ever heard of devil sticks? Like you like there's these two sticks and you go back and forth and there's a stick in the middle and you like play around with it, twirl it. Ever heard of that?
No, I think I've seen those though. Yeah.
All right. Anyways, my uncle had taught me how to do that whenever I was in elementary school. And then in elementary school, I was a skateboarder, also yo-yoed, hacky sacked, all that stuff, and was good at it. Like I'm the type of person, I get interested in something, I want to be great at it. That's just, when I got to middle school, Black kids don't yo-yo, Black kids don't skateboard, and it became, then I started to understand the trajectory of who I was supposed to be. So I would like not even tell people that, hey, I used to do this, or hey, I used to be on that. You know what I'm saying? Like I started to like be able to read how the reaction would be. And so your rockets, what model rockets?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got a bunch of hobbies like that like people never even knew that I was on, because I was like, well, it's safe for me to tell people that I play football and basketball. It's safe for me to tell people that I draw like Dragon Ball Z. All that stuff is acceptable. But it's not cool to like let them know about those things, or that like that I loved this all girls cartoon Sailor Moon. Like I loved it. Like I love like stuff like that. Just like, okay. And also too, man, this was at the age too where I even began to like change my voice. I started this, now this is really interesting. I started to try to like sound more Black. I started like, because well, I don't know, because there's a lot of reasons, but I just felt that well, for whatever reason, I felt that pressure there. And like, I'm from this like, I'm from Fayetteville, so like little country town, that if you're not in the military, it's like surprising that you're, to people, that you're even there. And so like, a lot of, I was raised just around this like Southern dialect. And then like, I even tried to push that away. It even literally changed the way I spoke. And that stayed with me for a long time, man. Probably till like college, maybe after college, before I really realized like, dude, your voice is your voice. It's okay.
I did a version of that too in a couple of different ways. One is I I started doing things like, instead of saying I'm going over there, I started saying I'm going over there. So I started doing things like that. But even more significantly, I started swearing, because I had a friend who swore a lot and I thought he was cool. And it seemed like that was a way to be masculine. And so I started doing it too. And I didn't even know what some of the words meant at first. I just knew that I just mimicked what he did. And because I wanted to impress him, and I was modeling, myself after the way I saw him present himself, because he seemed like he was a confident boy, and he was a boy that the girls liked, and like he was Girls were constantly after him.
Mhm.
All the boys liked him. He seemed like he was a cool guy. He could fit in with everybody. He seemed like he didn't really care about things. And I cared about things a lot. And I had realized that's no good. Caring about things a lot is no good. I just kept getting hurt. So I moved into
Right.
like,
Yeah, that's an interesting phase when you enter the not care about anything phase.
yeah.
Oh man. And
And
I
honestly, it was,
get why that's such an annoying phase to parents too.
but it was liberating for me. And that's where some of the trap is in this for me when I try to sort of meet this stuff. There's a part of me that really feels devoted to the personae and the identities that I developed at that age, because it felt like I was breaking free. I was breaking free from the sort of
Yeah,
family,
yeah,
the
yeah.
family conditioning. I thought I was, and to some extent I was. I was breaking free from the social conditioning. I was breaking free from the academic expectations. I mean, I actually I like my junior year, I went out to like drink with one of my friends. You know, we parked somewhere, and his dad was the vice principal, and he told me, "I'm not supposed to tell you this, but you and I, one of us is going to be the valedictorian next year." And my honest to God, my response to him was like, "Well, I'll take care of that," you know. And I tanked my grades so that I wouldn't be the valedictorian because I didn't want to be that person anymore.
Damn.
Yeah, that's how much I was. That's how much distance I wanted to get between the kid I was 2 years, 3 years prior to that, and the person I thought I needed to be in order to not be hurt and not have, not be at a basketball game and hear a girl I like sitting behind me talking to one of my friends, and my friend brought up my name and she just scoffed and said, "Oh, he's so queer." I was just like, I am going to get as far away from the person that got that kind of attention, those kind of remarks as I can.
And we, for so many of us, our personality is built upon layers and layers of coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
Our entire personality. And connecting with this inner child, this inner preteen, is maybe not the first step, but a big step in reconnecting and learning, relearning like what your personality really is,
Yeah.
because you really, I mean, I felt it. I mean, I felt that I really relearned my personality, remembered my personality.
And for me, the key point is, are those decisions that you and I made at that point in our lives disrupting our lives today? Are they having a negative effect in our lives today? And so my decision back when I was whatever it was, 13 or 14, that I didn't want to be seen anymore because it wasn't safe, kept me hidden for a good chunk of my adult life. And so when I started putting out work in this arena in which we're speaking right now, I've had to deal with that at various stages. Like, is it even okay for people to see me and to see what I'm doing and hear what I'm doing? Because that part of me is still in there that had those bad experiences and had that sort of social trauma, and felt and came to the decision like, nope, there's only one safe way to live, and that is to keep a low profile so that people don't come at you because you're not prepared to handle it.
What's up? This is Chris Wilson. Thank you so much for checking out the content, and I hope you found value within it. If you did, please like, subscribe, and share, as it helps the channel grow and helps me continue my work of seeking deeper truths and sharing it with the world.